Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. And also, could I have a motion for the approval of our Finance and Operations and External Affairs Committee minutes from December 16th?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, values moment, please. I think we have, I hope you're saying your name right, Akeisha Johnson.
Correct. Good morning. My name is Akeisha Johnson, and I'm the manager of project accounting. I've been with JEA for 16 years, with 14 of those years being in accounting services. My team consists of 2 senior financial analysts and 5 accountants. We are primarily responsible for the financial management of over $13 billion in capital assets. This includes assets for electric, water and wastewater, as well as district energy systems. We manage the entire life cycle of the assets, starting with the creation of the project, the recording of construction work in progress, allowance for funds used during construction, depreciation, asset transfers, retirements, as well as the sale of JEA capital assets. Other notable tasks we complete in project accounting includes the interlocal asset report, which is based off the interlocal agreement with our surrounding counties, as well as the tangible personal property tax return that we complete for the city of Jacksonville. For those of you attending the meeting in person, the safety protocol is on the screen and in your materials. John C. Maxwell said, "Integrity is not a given factor in everyone's life. It is a result of self-discipline, inner trust, and a decision to be relentlessly honest in all situations in our life. Integrity is when there's an alignment between our interior and exterior. How do you show up in all situations of your life? Do you show up differently at work than you do at home with family and out with friends? If so, how much of a difference is there? If there's a significant difference, are you being authentic or are you out of integrity? For example, if a coworker drops a load of cash on the floor, will you pick it up and give it back? Well, I think you will. I think you would give it back. But what if you find a load of cash at an amusement park? Will you turn it in to the authorities? Maybe, maybe not. Let's be more realistic. Let's say you're at a grocery store and you just waited in the long line to check out. You finally check out, and while you're unloading your groceries into your car, you notice you have an item that you did not pay for. Would you go back into the store and pay for the item, or would you call it a blessing? Again, integrity is an alignment between our interior and exterior. Make sure your values in your personal life are aligned with the values in your professional life. So here's 3 ways to build integrity or that alignment. Keeping promises. We make loads of commitments, agreements, and promises. When we break our promise, we lose direction. People say things like, he lost his integrity. She doesn't have any integrity. Being faithful to your commitments and promises will help you build integrity. This means do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. We can keep our promises by 1, making fewer promises. Learn how to say no when we know we cannot keep a promise. 2, write it down. You are 86% more likely to complete a task if you write it down. And 3, make it important. We all know when something is important to us, we will move mountains to get it done. The next is be honest and trustworthy. Be true to yourself and to others. When you are true to something, you are committed to it. You pay attention to the principles and the underlying values that drive it. You are also consistent. Consistency promotes trust and provides a sense of stability for others. We should have consistency between what we feel on the inside and what we do on the outside. And that goes back to interior and exterior alignment. Be accountable and responsible. Be accountable for your actions, behaviors, performance, and decisions. This includes being accountable for your actions even if you miss the mark. It is easy to take ownership when you do something well. However, integrity comes into place when you face failure. We must learn to admit when we make a mistake and learn from it. Never be afraid to apologize. This is a big one. When you are wrong, take accountability and apologize for your actions. Lastly, be responsible. Be responsible by caring and not mindlessly carrying out a task. This demonstrates awareness and caring to those around you. In summary, you can build integrity by keeping your promises, be honest, trustworthy, accountable, and responsible. Building integrity will allow you to align your interior and your exterior, ensuring that your values in your personal life are aligned with your values in your professional life. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Awesome.
That was great, teacher. Thank you. Yeah, I'll just say, I think it's reflects great upon JEA that you take time to discuss the importance of values, integrity. I'm not sure a lot of other entities your size do that, but good on you for doing it. I think that's great.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're ready for comments from the public. And we'll start off with Logan. Logan, how you doing?
Thank you.
Good.
Where should I talk from? Is this
I think they can hear you.
okay right here?
Yeah.
Okay, my name is Logan Cross. I'm the chair of the Sierra Club of Northeast Florida and the San Marco resident. And thank you for allowing me to talk to you today. I feel the topic I need to bring up is pertinent to this group since you all are largely the financial custodians of JEA. It almost goes without saying that JEA is suffering a 20 to 30 year financial burden by virtue of its commitment to Plant Vogtle. The last thing JEA needs at this point is another financial burden. Pretty soon, the JEA leadership will be coming to you all with the recommendations of the modeling that has been done for the electrical integrated resource plan. And by all indications and everything that I've heard and seen, there's a good chance that it'll include a recommendation that JEA build a new combined cycle natural gas plant. Now, many times when the topic of a combined cycle natural gas plant or adding one comes up, a lot of times what is not included is the cost of such a plant. For this reason, I did a little bit of research. So I got the price of a Florida Power and Light plant that was approved in 2018, Dania Beach in Broward County. At that time in 2018, the estimated cost was $888 million. By the time it was commissioned in 2022, there's a good chance the cost exceeded $1 billion. Okay, so as the financial custodians, I would hope that you'll get an answer to these questions before you approve such a plant. How much will it actually cost JEA to build a combined cycle natural gas plant? And how much will that cost be by the time you add in cost overruns? Another question to consider is how much land, solar, and energy storage capacity could be added for $1 billion? Will such a plant still be viable, financially viable, in the peak of its lifespan, which is between 2040 and 2050? And finally, if JEA commits to a combined cycle natural gas plant, building a new one, it's essentially locking itself into dependence on fossil fuels through at least 2050 and possibly beyond that. So is it at this point a wise financial decision for JEA to commit to building a combined cycle natural gas plant? Pedro, I think, is going to be giving you a presentation later in the meeting, and hopefully he can provide some light on this and expand on that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Logan. And Landon, do we have any public comments online at all?
We do have a raised hand in the audience. Josh, you are now recognized to speak.
Thank you. Thanks so much for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. My name is Josh Melko. I'm an associate professor at University of North Florida, and I teach quantum mechanics. But for the past 2 years, I've been learning about energy markets and transmission and the grid. And I got to tell you, this subject is more complicated than quantum mechanics. So I want to thank you for all of your work here to, try to maintain reliability and affordability and sustainability. Really want to applaud, Pedro and the rest of the team's work on IRP, and looking forward to that presentation. And just, reiterate my support for renewable energy in general, especially factoring in recent federal legislation and the trajectory for how the prices of these types of projects is moving, not only regionally, but nationally and internationally. Bloomberg NEF saying that renewable energy projects or clean energy projects are equal now to fossil fuel projects on a global scale for the first time. And I think that trend is going to continue to tip in favor of clean energy. So applaud the work that's been done, and just looking forward to hopefully incorporating more renewables. I also wanted to comment briefly on the SEAM market, which I know is on the agenda today. Florida has very little interstate transmission. Florida specifically will benefit from transmission because its capacity to import and export is very low. Peak load's around 48 gigawatts. Our transmission capacity as a state is about 3 gigawatts. So that's a big problem from a resiliency perspective. And, I understand joining SEAM. I just don't think SEAM regionally is the right solution. It's not really an RTO. I'd say it's about 10% of an RTO. And I understand why entities in the Southeastern region want to do a little bit, but not a lot of it, with regard to regional energy market reform. I just think it's going to bring about 10% of the possible benefits that a formal RTO would. I know this is a bit outside of your control, just sort of raising the point that I don't think SEAM is a long-term beneficial solution to lower wholesale energy prices and lead to transmission build-out. I do support, of course, your participation in SEAM as it exists, but hopefully you're advocating and finding ways to build out transmission to connect Florida to other states in our region, and advocating for interregional transmission as we build towards electrifying everything much more. We're going to need that increased transmission capacity. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Landon, anybody else, or is that it for public comments?
We see no other raised hands or comments submitted in the chat, so that is it.
Okay, thank you, Landon. Okay, Renetta.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning, Chair DeSalvo, committee members. I'm going to be presenting this item on the interlocal agreement between the Port, Jacksonville Port Authority, and JEA. So you've heard about this project before, but just to kind of refresh, the project is going to raise the height of our transmission lines that cross St. Johns River at the Fulton Cut Crossing near Blunt Island. Jacksport has identified that if the lines are increased or raising the lines, the height of the lines, is going to allow for larger vessels to cross the water. So therefore, there would be expanded navigation. So JEA completed a study back in 21 to develop design concepts to conduct this project in a reliable and resilient manner, so we would get the requisite infrastructure. We entered into a memorandum of agreement, MOA, with Jacksport in June of 22, agreeing, subject to funding by Jacksport, to enter later on into an interlocal agreement. And that's the subject of this agenda item. So the current funding identified by Jacksport is $45 million. And the current project estimate is approximately $43 million. The projected completion date with the preliminary schedule is at the end of fiscal year 26. And so the action item that's before you today is to recommend, for this body to recommend to the board to approve the draft interlocal agreement in substantially the same form, and the draft has been provided to you to the full board. And Regina will be glad to take any questions that you have.
150 pages.
I know.
Well, basically, we received the draft from Jacksport, and the material terms are pretty much worked out. We're working out details. JEA will be responsible for completing the work. The port will be responsible for playing. Some of the small details are working out because it's a multi-year project. In the event the port's funds are deobligated, the grant funds are deobligated, they're going to need to post security to secure payment for us to continue work. So we're in the process of working that out. Yeah, I don't believe that that's going to be an issue. We're proposing that if their funds are deobligated, they provide us notice and provide us with 30 days, we'll provide them with 30 days to give us an alternative source. Otherwise, we'll talk about stopping work and what that looks like. So we're working through the details of that portion. But otherwise, the material terms, again, they'll complete the payment and we'll complete the work.
What about cost overruns?
Also, they'll have to, what we've been clear about in the interlocal is they'll be responsible for all
The cost.
payments. Yes, and JEA won't be floating credit.
Okay.
So that portion are the details we're working on. They've gotten a combination of funding sources from both the state and the city. But the city is a match for the state funding. So we'll be having a conversation with them probably early next week to talk about the replacement funding, if that's an issue.
What percentage of our power comes across that river there?
That's significant.
A significant portion. So obviously, I guess the liability is, you know, an accident or something there.
Oh, and that's why we took we were very deliberate and did the conceptual prior to, and so there's been work going on as far as procurement and selecting a contractor, an engineer contractor, and we have stopped short of awarding the project. But the entity that was selected, it was a competitive process and has experience in conducting these types of projects. And the sequencing of construction will be determined, but it will all be mindful. We will all be mindful with making sure that it's going to be reliable, because we recognize the
Yeah,
magnitude of
That's
this.
the scariest part.
Well, and the cost overruns.
Yeah,
And how do you stop? We're 70%. I'm sorry, I'm going to doom and gloom it here for a second. We're 70% complete. There's cost overruns. The port doesn't have access to the funds. I mean, this isn't a project that you just kind of stop. So I am concerned about that. I appreciate that they're responsible for it, but functionally, how do you just pause and wait for them to catch up from a funding perspective?
So I had a chance to talk to Pedro, for example, about points of no return once you've completed work, but their funding dries up and you have to go ahead and complete the work. JA would go ahead and complete the work, but it is a binding interlocal agreement. So you could take enforcement action for the contract and they have to pay the funding for the funding.
I would say that this has been a long-term discussion for way before this board was aboard or on the board, and the relationship and the discussions with the board have been very positive in the last 6 or 8 months. We've made lots of progress on this and have a significantly improved relationship, I would say. I think that's safe to say. And they're committed to doing it. We're committed to doing it. And so we're writing the agreement. Most agreements we write for the doom and gloom possibility. But I think we're in a really good spot that it'll be positive on the outcome. We've worked through lots of the topics and issues, and we will keep you informed if anything changes for the good or the bad. Keep you informed. So it's all good questions, and we have to make those decisions as we go. But it is significantly more positive.
The Corps approved it and everything's good to go. And I guess the number that was floated around.
The
permit has been completed.
Okay.
Yeah, we would, this first phase would be the permitting phase, finalizing the engineering. And first, let me go back to, I concur with what Jay said as far as relationship has been very, very positive, and Regina has been very just excellent on the doom and gloom portion of it to mitigate our risk, because that's what contracts are about. But there's going to be milestones in there. There's going to be milestones where the guaranteed maximum price is going to come. So that's an opportunity.
Go, no go.
Correct.
Correct.
So, and we're going to get GMPs I can see Pedro back at 60%, and then we're going to get another GMP, and so those are going to be goes and no goes points of it. In Committee Member Morales, you're aware of this, and once you get a GMP, especially at the end, the change orders after that, that's on them.
Right.
So you have that. And so there are going to be milestones in there where we can make decisions and where the port can make decisions.
But, okay, from the Corps of Engineers, they have not completed a record of decision yet on this?
Well, we need a permit from the Corps of Engineers, and it's what is the level of that permitting. So all of that will happen now in this first phase. And it's not just the Corps permitting, there's local permits. And that's part of just a regular project.
Right.
To get the permitting.
The discussion with the Corps up to this point is, what do we need to do to get a permit?
Okay.
Well, it started with, do we really need a permit? And what do we do and how do we do it? So that, they've described some of that, but we haven't.
It's the type of permit.
Yeah, in order to avoid some of the doom and gloom, we haven't done any of this until
Mhm.
we get this completed.
Okay.
And then we'll go.
Gotcha.
Right.
Chair Salvo, I'm sorry, I introduced the term doom and gloom, but
No,
I think in this case.
it's
we
proven
really
to be
do
that,
need to-
yeah.
And the number for the cost has bounced all over the place while we were talking about this, and it was, I guess, kind of playing out in the newspaper. So are we really comfortable that $45 million is the right number? I mean, I know we've got escalation clauses in our contract and we can address it. It's just, that was a much lower number than I thought it would come in at.
Well, I think when we did the feasibility study, the level, that cost estimate was a level 4, based on the conceptual nature of it. And so we're going to know more as the design is finalized. So the current estimate from the contractor that was selected, they looked at that. They said, looking at this juncture is 43 million, which is, I think, a couple of million more from the conceptual. So I don't anticipate for it to go down, but we're going to know more as this goes along. And there'll be opportunities, and we will communicate that to the port, and they'll have opportunities to respond or get additional funding.
Y'all have made significant progress with this partner, so I'm happy to make the motion to accept the agreement as presented.
And I'll second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great, motion passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Okay, Garrett.
Good morning. Good morning, committee. Today I'm here to present some information on Southeast Energy Exchange Market, or SEEM, and our for consideration approval of modifications of the JEA board approved open access transmission tariff to support the SEEM trading platform. I thought I would do some background on SEEM and then talk about the tariff and then follow with a recommendation. So that's my plan for attack today. SEEM has implemented a 15 market to supplement energy training in the Southeast. It spans 8 states, but not Florida. So this change would incorporate another state with established market rules that govern bid, offer, and matching procedures. The Energy Authority, or TEA, is a participant of SEEM for SEEM members Santee Cooper and MEAG. So we will become one of those members. Each year, SEEM has a window for other utilities that meet the eligibility requirements to join. At this time, Florida utilities that have requested to become members of SEEM are Seminole Electric, Duke, Florida, Tampa Electric, and JEA. Gainesville Regional Utilities has requested to become a participant as opposed to a member. For JEA to become a member and a participant of SEEM, JEA would need to meet the eligibility requirements, including executing a series of governing agreements and modify its open access transmission tariff to provide transmission and ancillary services at no cost and settle the transaction losses financially, and for all SEEM members and participants to execute each party's transmission service agreement. This market does not replace any current markets that JEA and TA currently participate in. The market opportunity will provide energy cost savings as well as revenues to JEA and its customers. We're estimating over the next 4 or 5 years, $250 to $500 million a year in revenues or savings, and a upfront cost of 50,000, not to exceed 50,000, and probably a little less than 50,000 annually. And there would be no back-end cost because that back-end work has already been developed by JEA when they implemented SEAM for Santee Cooper and MEAG.
Hey, Gary, I want to clarify, 250 to $500 million of savings?
Thousands.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a great deal for 50,000.
Yeah.
250 to 500,000. Okay, thank you.
I just hope we get some interest.
I know, yeah. They're gonna make a motion fast. Sorry.
Thank you for correcting me. On September 30th, JEA was accepted as a member of SEAM effective January 1 of this year, pending fulfillment of the requirements of SEAM that includes modifications of JEA's tariff, as well as execution of all other governing agreements. Now, for the tariff discussion, currently JEA has a tariff that allows JEA to sell transmission services across the JEA system on standard terms and conditions at predetermined rates. The tariff was originally approved by the board in 1997 and was last modified in 2007. JEA's tariff is not used by JEA's customers, but used by utilities and marketers to transmit energy across and out of the JEA system on a non-discriminatory basis, use of JEA's wires. The transmission tariff does not require rate hearing like other customer rate tariffs. To meet one of these requirements of SEAM, JEA's tariff needs to be modified to add a 15-minute non-firm transmission product, set the transmission and ancillary service prices for this product at zero cost, and setting the transmission losses financially. Attached, you will find clean and red line versions of the tariff. 200 pages, not significant changes. Staff recommends, the Finance and Operation Committee recommend that the board approve the tariff modifications to fulfill the requirements of SEAM regarding transmission service. And I'll be happy to field any questions you might have.
And you said it was a $50K upfront cost?
Yeah,
Okay.
probably a little less.
That's okay.
Can I oversimplify this? Correct me if this is correct, or wrong. We have a relationship with the Energy Authority. We helped stand that organization up years ago. We have been approached by them and SEAM to expand our partners within that relationship to include SEAM, but we're not prohibited to continue, to our speaker's point, our public comment point. We can continue to explore other relationships. There's nothing that would prohibit us from finding another exchange at a certain point. This does feel like their name is Southeast Energy Exchange Market.
Yeah.
So this is very Florida centric, based on the participants you mentioned, but we can always go look for more exchange relationships.
That's
Have
correct.
I oversimplified this whole
No,
thing?
it's perfect. We actually, with a year's notice, we can get out of SEAM and do something else. And
And-
we can do something else as we're doing SEAM. So
And as we expand our exchange network, if we expand our exchange network, we would have access to other people's clean energy production. Is that correct?
that's correct. The selling point for this was generally for the integration of solar in the Southeast. At least that's the talking points that SEAM platform members.
But we could partner with them to specifically go find clean energy sources, or is that,
Well, no.
it's really about,
It's all about bids and offers.
it's, okay.
Bids and offers.
This is not Florida centric, though. Those were the new additions to the SEAM. It started a year and a half. It started before this, and Florida was not involved. No Florida utility was involved. These are additions to it, but it covers now 8 states, you said, so then 7. But
Well,
maybe,
Go,
maybe
go to 9.
you go to 9 states, okay.
Because I mean, Duke, obviously, Santee Cooper, I mean, there were, but the new additions seem to be Florida.
They are all,
They were.
this is,
They're all
yeah,
Florida.
yeah,
And how
because the
long,
others were already in.
how long is this agreement for?
It automatically rolls over
Okay, so
until,
it's not a 5-year,
Nope.
2-year, or
we're in it.
each year we can renew it, or,
Actually, we don't even have to renew it. If we want to get out, we give a notice within
right.
a year's notice.
So it takes 1 year to get out.
That's correct.
It takes 1 year to get out, but we don't have to buy. And we have the flexibility of using it.
We could choose to use it or not.
And this
Right.
gives, what this really does is helps, I believe, helps Gary and his team in a day-to-day market with that 15-minute market, gives them flexibility. It's
More options.
yeah.
We see it's basically another tool in the toolbox that allows us to integrate things within our system.
I'll make a motion. We accept as presented.
Second,
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Great, motion passed. Thanks, Gary.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gary.
Hey, Regina, delegation authority.
Mr. Chair and committee members, this is largely administrative. From time to time, JEA conducts business with the Florida Department of Transportation, or FDOT. You're authorized to delegate authority to individuals to approve and execute certain documents on behalf of JEA. In doing so, FDOT requires the completed form that's included in your packet, along with proof of the board's approval of the form and delegation to the individuals identified. What you'll notice on your form is positions are identified rather than names, and that'll save us the trouble of having to amend each time there's a change in personnel. So what we're seeking is a recommendation for board approval of the form.
is there a dollar amount that's limited? I mean, or is this just an
It's
open?
really a dollar,
No,
an easement or something.
Right, so agreements, it's not associated with dollar amounts, but types of transactions. So I think there are 2 or 3 individuals that would be authorized to execute any type of document. And I think that's Ray, Jay, and those are agreements, easements, and then permitting is delegated down.
Okay, any other questions at all?
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Good, thank you, Regina.
Sure. Thank you.
Pedro. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair DeSalvo and members of the Finance and Operations Committee. Plan for the future is the main objective, so we're going to be discussing today. A reliable, affordable, and sustainable future for our JEA community. I'll provide you an update today on 3 main objectives. Is what I will present in the IRP regarding the IRP. Number 1, I want to bring to closure the modeling and its near-term and long-term takeaways. Share that with this group. Provide a progress update of key implementation activities, how things are coming along, and have an open dialogue about potential JEA goals and plans resulting from the IRP. During our meeting in December, you may recall, we went over the potential futures with the scenarios and key variables and a little more rich technical data. That's not the goal today. Today, just kind of summarize some of that. The IRP team performed further analysis in response to stakeholders' feedback and technical reviews, plus what we discussed in December. Last month, we met, JEA met with the stakeholders to provide more in-depth review of these results. Everyone was a great participation. I'd like to just go over today the refined and expanded analysis results, which is what we're seeing on the screen. An easy question that I want to put on the table: what changed? What changed from our last discussion? So the solar and PV cost, solar photovoltaic, let's say PV solar, was updated to reflect the current market trend. We'll make sure we are actually using the right numbers, along with more accurate interconnection cost from transmission. Some of those numbers needed to be updated. We're seeing an averaging low to mid 40s increase on the solar PV versus what was presented the last time. We're not talking about escalation. We're not talking about the form of a PPA. Those are what the tool is using for the analysis. Another item that we worked through were additional sensitivity analysis. We utilized the current outlook and we did a low, high, and no growth sensitivity that was performed by the team, in addition to high fuel cost. We also discussed carbon emission sensitivities in this analysis. Our consultants what they did is they apply each sensitivity and they stretch it in different directions to see where it goes, one at a time, and random modeling to then determine what are the common resources on this variability. Then the output of that is what we will be discussing today to summarize it. Let's review those common resources and modeling results. This is it's in a timetable. The years that you see here is the years in which these resources are coming up as a result of the analysis. So they are basically bookending some of these things. So what's different? The model has identified 150 megawatts of battery as a resource addition that we did not discuss the last time to serve potential system energy demands fluctuations, ups and downs that we were stretching during the analysis. However, a system integration study is needed to help determine the reliability constraints for such a large installation. 150 megawatts is of a 4-hour battery system. It's a large installation, just in a context. I don't want to underestimate it to anyone. I want to make it clear. And also, there's the cost to own is about $237 million. Right? So, not just to kind of help a little bit to paint a picture, we are going to do additional analysis on this. The other three resources you see on the screen are additions that basically were reaffirmed by the stretches that are needed as the IRP potential futures and the inputs between now and 2030. So that's what you see, totaling 1,275 megawatts of solar and 571 megawatts of the natural gas resource being identified as needed to provide affordable, reliable, sustainable energy. What, as you may recall, when we talked about the last time, what the tool does, it takes the futures and finds commonalities. What is the best solution? This is the outcome between now and 2030. So it was confirmed what we discussed last time. Beyond 2030, there is significant uncertainty, right? From a technical basis, there's a lot of uncertainty. So let's discuss that further. Between 2030, as I mentioned, look at it between 2030 and on, the modeling resources do not have consistent outcomes that you can actually, the solar ranges up to double the amount of the near term and up to 50 times the amount of battery relevant, relative to the 2030 results that we just discussed, right, before 2030. To put things into perspective, 2,475 megawatts represents about 400 acres of land. It's about, based on Florida's ways of installing this, it represents 33 sites that don't have to be built and connected or getting to either PPAs or acquisitions. There is uncertainty. Doesn't mean that we don't have to continue doing analysis, but it's just providing a range that is difficult to kind of determine what's going to happen beyond that time. What is the best decisions that we can make? What recommendations can come about? I want to talk a little bit about cost briefly. And again, these are things that we'll continue working through. When you look at the delta between the leased portfolio basis, which is between now and 2030 and beyond, there's about $15 to $20 billion different between now and 2050. Cumulatively cost $15 to $20 billion between today and the 2050 versus the base one of the least cost solutions that is identified. Mm-hmm. The reason I'm bringing this up is not to alarm anyone. The reason I'm bringing this up is like beyond 2030 is becoming very difficult. That's basically the summation. Anything between now and 2030, there's a lot of certainty that we can actually come out with recommendations that are very, very solid and economically from an affordability perspective. That helps. So what we have learned is then that we have to do more studies, right? And there are some factors I want to highlight for this. There's energy resources availability. And put your mind 2031 onward, please, just to kind of see why I'm describing this. There is commercial available options. They might not be available today or the near term. We don't have certainty, but we may be able to see carbon capture, SMARS, small modular reactors. Hydrogen technologies may evolve that we can actually incorporate it. More clean energy solutions becoming available and affordable for customers than the ones we see today from opportunities and options are things that we see as energy resources availability beyond 2030 that will help bring those numbers down and kind of come up with better solutions. And the electric system integration, as discussed by Gary, right, to make sure we have access, right, all that he's looking for the 50-minute interval because as a intermittent resource, that creates complexity. I commend the team for what they did to look for alternatives to have more tools in the toolbox. But we live in a balanced market. So there are some constraints to be able to transport point to point. Transmission cost continue fluctuating, and it makes it very difficult. Between now, 2030, there might be changes in regulations that are going to help us to streamline and make better decisions beyond 2030. That's the kind of context as why I'm bringing it up, that there are some things we're going to have to continue keeping an eye on as we go through. Environmental regulations. Related to emissions, that bring additional uncertainty to the long term. But we know there are some changes on the new source performance standards that is going to help pair down with technology to find solutions and get through it. There's a lot of discussions going on between now and 2030. Those things are going to be reaffirmed. And between now and then, there's going to be another IRP within the next 3 to 5 years that we're going to continue getting all these inputs as our market continue evolving in the adoption of clean energy. We'll be able to make better analysis, better studies from that technology coming up. I'm going to pause in here for a second. That kind of sums it up for the modeling results. And I would like to then move to another piece, but I want to pause to see if there is any questions, what I just shared.
Really just a comment, if 2030 is so critical, I would suggest we don't wait 5 years to do the next IRP, right? I mean, we say 3 to 5. I'd like for us to land on when it's going to be and put that stake in the ground. And my guess is it should be closer to the 3-year than the 5-year.
So by May.
I mean, I know it's been a huge effort and a big lift, but I think it's important if 2030 is so critical.
I think that's, so what I hope to be able to get out of today is that type of discussion. So we will come back in the April board meeting with firm recommendations of what are the goals and targets and where and one of them will be, we'll narrow down what that looks like.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question is process and timeline and remind me, because, you know, laughed with one of the IRP participants who's joined us today that they know more about the IRP than we do because they've invested so much time in it and so appreciative of all that investment. But remind me of the process and remind me of the timeline.
I think the slides are going to get to that. Maybe let's go to the next slides, and I think it gets to the timeline in the process.
I didn't see timeline, but that's okay. We can talk about it. But before we move forward in the slides, you know, I think it's important for us to land philosophically on what the definition of a goal is, because there are layup goals, there's stretch goals, there's goals that are expected and accountable to, and then there's goals that you want to push and get to. So I don't know, Joe, if we've ever really talked about what kind of goals we're setting.
So,
Right, we haven't.
Right.
I mean, I think
so
as we move forward, and maybe not today,
a
but it
couple
goes
items.
back to timeline and process.
I want to touch on a couple of your questions to see if I can formulate. I want to get a better understanding when you talk about the process in the IRP. Can you help me understand your question from where we are at and what's next? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah,
I'm gonna
there's
talk.
not a-
Okay, I'm gonna discuss a little bit of that, but we are learning as well, right? We're becoming better at what we do. So in the next IRP, we're gonna actually integrate a lot of other activities that we're actually doing. I'll call it a little bit seriously, and right, we're gonna do it more as a integrated. We're gonna come back with more of a recommendation of what's gonna look like. between now, I'll use the word between now and June, there are gonna be more conversations about it. I'll touch on a little bit of where we at in stages, and you may have some specific questions on the activities as I share a little bit more details.
What sort of helped me, Marty, talking with Ray and Ted last week was, right now, we're being brought in as the this IRP pivots from the analysis they've been doing with different scenarios to now the stovepipe.
Right.
And then from that, then the goals, et cetera. So that sort of helped me, a little bit on that direction.
And I'd just say, looking out further, it is so unknown. That, the 30 to 50 billion dollars that sooner and more often is going to be necessary, because it's just, things are changing faster than we can.
It's one of the reasons that, and we need to talk about this too, we don't think that it's the right time for us to pick a number for 2050.
Right.
Because there are, and Pedro hit on hydrogen, small modular reactors, different clean energy, other types of technology. And should the goals be achievable, reachable, real, or, and I think it's important that they are something that we're working towards. And I don't know the right way, this will be in the doom and gloom kind of category, sorry, but I don't want to make up a number that we don't have any idea how to get to. The reason we need to do more often, do the IRPs more often, is that the things are changing so quickly right now, and it takes a long time to do. 2030, there's people sitting around the table that are nervous about the idea of 2030. So because of the time it takes to accomplish any of these, solar, the natural gas, any solution, it takes that long to be able to do them. So when we do an update in 3 years, we may only be looking out then over till 2035 and 2040, because the world is changing so much. So I think the discussion today is about how often should we do the IRP?
Mm-hmm.
I think what we're talking about recommending is reasonable, achievable goals for the short term, and a continued effort to stretch and do the right things on the long term.
So sometimes what you can do is set those reasonable, achievable, where we get to say to you, you have to hit this goal,
Yes.
period, end of conversation, rather than start with that stretch where you've got wiggle room to tell us, oh, well, we didn't hit it. We knew we might not, and it was a stretch. So relative to goals,
Right.
I like to set reasonable, achievable, hard to get to, nothing, no layup goals, but then also set that stretch and almost have here's our baseline. We have to do this, period, end of conversation, but we really want to get here. So, and again, we just hadn't talked about goals.
That's just the type that's just the type of discussion that we want to have here. And I think the timeline portion of it, which is the plan portion of it, we're going to get into that discussion today, because there are goals, and then there's kind of like the roadmap on how we're going to get those goals, or what's underlying that. So I think we'll get into that discussion as well. But just what this committee is talking about here, that's why they are preliminary or I don't know what they're conceptual goals, and we can go into, I think they're all based on something pragmatic. It's just those different levels when you get to aspirational or stretch or what have you.
Let's review the current and potential energy mix to help provide some clarity, which is what I have here on the screen. And I wanted to kind of follow me along on what I'm going to be sharing. We're gonna pivot into what happened, right? We have good data on the energy mix that we have in 2022. And in 2022, to serve all customers, we used 58% of our fleet was utilizing gas. We have 12% that we're using our coal petcoke. We had 2% of our energy came from renewable resources we currently have in service. 28% was in purchases that we did across the system. As we look into what that potential 2030 is going to look like from a timeline, right? What begin with the end in mind. As we move towards what the IRP is telling JEA, I look at it as what is telling me, what is the IRP is telling me between, realistically speaking, is if we move what a 7% higher demand that we will have in the system by then projected at a 1% rate, we'll be having additional efficient resources to provide 54% being covered with gas, 3% will be utilizing our petco of current facilities, 24% will likely come from renewable resources that can be integrated in different ways, different methods, means, 11% coming from the nuclear, and 8% energy mix coming from power purchases. I want to share this with you because I think you have a very, very good question. 1,275 megawatts of solar is a stretch goal in the window of time that we're talking. It's not, I just realistically speaking, we can discuss more details on it. It's a stretch goal. It's not easy to achieve. Just want to put it out there. There aren't that many organizations across the country who in the window of time that have ever achieved, and some of them in the entire state don't have this much. I just want to kind of put it realism. I don't want to oversimplify, but I want you to kind of feel comfortable that we are stretching ourselves, and these are very difficult to achieve, but yes, are the right things to do from an affordable, reliable, and sustainable future.
And that's a great point to illustrate that you all are way further down this process than we as a body are. So I'd like some context. This is, to me, the most powerful slide in the deck, but I don't have context on it. I don't have any context on, is that hard? Is that easy? How do we benchmark? You know,
Appreciate
Is it purchased? Is it produced? Is it?
So as we go into the next update, probably when we come in April on the next committee meeting, we'll basically kind of substantiate a little bit more. But I think I appreciate your comment that this is a powerful message. But I wanted to kind of share it with you, put it in context, not extrapolate it too much. But I think it's important that we provide you more transparent information to support that. And I'll share some of that as I continue on. But I didn't want to continue on the discussion without kind of balancing this out. As we look it over, so 2030, begin with the end in mind. I sort of wake up every morning. This is what is my 2030 going to look like, what I'm doing to get there. We could be at 35% non-carbon emitting resources, and that's 1,275 megawatts of solar plus the 206 on nuclear that it's coming up. We're going to receive an update today. We identified 571 megawatts of higher efficiency gas resources. I'll talk about where we are in the process of, is it feasible? What does that look like? Higher efficiency resources provides you use less gas to produce more energy. That's a benefit that we're going to get. We'll use other resources. We'll talk about that. And as a how are we impacting the environment with this? We are actually looking at ourselves. What is the future going to look like? We will be reducing significantly the chalk in the line 2005 emissions rate from 15 million down to around 3.7. Is it a stretch goal? Yes. Can we stretch it more? Yes. More to discuss. We want to have that open discussion. Good takeaway for us to talk about next steps and give you a little bit of perspective. So if we don't, let's go to the implementation activities.
I mean, this is a dialogue slide at this point. We haven't approved any. I mean, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page.
All of these are.
And we'll get more context.
And we're not making recommendations today.
I understand.
Let me just ask one thing, just on this slide. So look at, hopefully, theoretically, whatever you want to call it right now, 2030, 24% renewable, but we're reducing the purchase power. Is the goal that we're doing that in-house? Because right now, most of our renewable we're purchasing, correct?
I will use this word. We're illustrating the amount of renewable clean energy. Yes, it could be purchased PPAs, but it could be owned. We're studying it in both ways. We want to illustrate how much clean energy is coming in, which provides additional more balance. And I totally understand.
So also 11% nuclear is also purchase power. And
right.
It is, we don't know yet all the renewables that we have, the 2% now,
Right.
are actually technically purchase power agreements
Yeah.
because we couldn't build anything.
Right, with the old
Well,
laws.
we couldn't build anything cost effectively
Right.
because of the way the tax laws work.
Right.
With
Yes.
the change in the tax law, we have to evaluate what is the right way for us to achieve that 24%. It could be that it's technically purchase power. We pull that out separately from.
Okay. That's what I would just understand.
It's a very, very good question. And when I talk about purchase power, basically we have to go to the market and get it. That's kind of an easier way to illustrate that 8% of 22. So we have to go to the market and get it, whether as a fixed power purchase agreement or actually buy for what is in excess in the market to be able to fulfill our needs. That's the reason we illustrate it that way. It's a good question. I know it's sometimes difficult to illustrate it.
Just trying to understand. Thank you.
No. Let's, any other questions?
One of the things that we need to keep on working on, and it's a little tricky because we haven't thought about it this way, is the fact that it's purchase power should matter less because we should be able to track where we're getting it from, because we show this and we should be able to track that. So we'll get more information on that as we move forward. We also have, I think in the coming meeting, last meeting, we approved some solar.
150
some FPL
megawatts
for
with
150
FPL.
megawatts.
So,
Go ahead.
So we are pursuing, because 2030 is right around
Yeah.
the corner. So we're putting into place right now actions and pursuing certain things, stopping short of. So it's going to be a combination of JEA as well as purchase power, because we already have the 150 megawatts from FP&L. And we are working with associations, power associations, public power associations to work out additional PPAs for solar, because it's all going to be gobbled up. And if we
We're
wait,
the only people looking for
that's
solar.
exactly right. And so we're not waiting till like the final completion of the IRP to start actions, because I don't think anybody would argue if JEA should get more solar. So we're starting that process, and that will of course come before this committee and come before the board. But
There's
back
also
to you,
the request for proposal that's out too for solar.
Mhm. Which could be purchase power, or it could be JEA owned because of the new legislation. To go back to your question, it's gonna be a combination, because we already have in place now
I
PPAs
understand.
for solar.
Okay. Thank you.
We on this slide, keep in mind the IRP is selecting the least cost alternative whenever it's making it goes through the model, and it is selecting the least cost alternative for the long term. And so that's the reason that some of these are here. And we've said this before, 2% is, we should have more than 2% solar already. It just, that is there's a series of reasons that we can go backwards and look at, but we don't have as much solar on our system as we should have in 2023. And so some of the work that we're doing parallel to the IRP that we've already brought to you and that we'll bring to you are just kind of base level things that are the right things for us to do anyway.
Well, and to the technology advancement point, I mean, microgrid residential neighborhoods are in pilot right now. We can't say we're going to do one today, but let's see where that pilot goes. I mean, there's so many things that are now out there.
We have teams looking at not only the residential type things, but we have within our new business group, one of the things that we're talking to are some of the campus style locations where they will be responsible for managing and leading the distributed energy resource groups to understand. That's not here yet either. Those are technology. That's the reason we need to do the IRP sooner, is that we've got to be able to focus on how distributed energy resources are going to affect us, and we can support our customers in that world too.
Great.
Okay.
Let's just provide an update on the implementation activity, because I think that will answer some of the questions that we're discussing here today. First, with with the final resources modeling, all right, we're done with the modeling piece, right? Today, we are receiving a 90% draft of the IRP report for JEA's review. We'll continue to finalize that report, but I'm just providing an update on that, an action plan, and we plan to have an IRP public forum event in late May. That is already scheduled. So between now and May, this is the kind of conversation we should be having collectively and collaborating to make some decisions. In late January, JEA began the solar RFP process for the four JEA sites to be PPA or own. Questions were submitted, responses were provided to all parties via the JEA and the Energy Authority portal that we have established. JEA received 13 notice of intent to respond to this RFP that we sent, with bids expected by the end of this month. Expecting to receive by the end of the March 28th is the last day. The team will review the proposals to determine a short list of qualified responders for further evaluation. Then we expect to complete the selection by the end of June, and we're going to begin negotiations from there. So between now and June, we'll be able to have more meat behind what's happening with the JEA solar sites.
How many acres do we currently own of the land that we had purchased for the previous agreement?
Yeah, I have the number.
Hold on a second. We'll have that answer.
I don't want to change my screen, but
That's okay.
I'll answer that before we end the day.
All right, thank you.
Before the end of the updates. I'll pull it up. I have it on
We have 3 or 4 sites that,
The RFP are for 4 sites.
for 4 sites.
Mhm.
That's okay.
So
Yes.
the RFP is actually initiated with at least 300 megawatts, but we have capability for more in the land that is there. All depends on whether we can disturb wetlands, some wetlands
Sure.
involved and all that. So you understand this better than I do. So, but there is capability for more, and we actually ask for full development. We did not ask for just do this much. We full development of the sites. As the responses come back, we're going to know how much more we can do based on what the developers are looking into. I'll owe you the response. I'll look it up.
Thank you, no
in a little
problem.
bit. Absolutely.
I think someone's looking it up right now, Pedro.
I'm sure.
I had it at the top of my head. I just don't want to say it. I don't want
It's a lot.
to.
Get more specific.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I don't
We
want
talked earlier about needing, theoretically, to be everything 300 to 400 acres and so forth. I don't think we have that much, but we're just curious. Okay.
Yeah, I think we have way more than that. I think
Yeah.
it's not 300 or 400. I think it might be 3 or 4. We need to check.
Okay,
that.
that's okay.
You said for 1,200 megawatts, we need 300 acres.
400
I think
acres.
it's way more than that. But we'll talk
Okay,
on that too.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Yeah.
we have way more than 300 acres.
Okay, I don't know.
The next piece we have is the feasibility study. A feasibility study intent to identify additional infrastructure needs such as location, constructability, availability of gas, water, electric connections in our service territory to inform next steps in the process. The RP modeling results indicate the need for a new combined cycle gas generating plant to serve JEA customers. Where is it going to be located has not been decided. We have 3 alternatives that we are assessing within our footprint of property that we own that will actually facilitate that. As of today, the Black and Beach team that we contracted had completed a technical review of these facilities. And we're working to apply additional non-technical considerations around economic development, resiliency, reliability, and sustainability to continue informing ourselves on what this looks like from a feasibility perspective. Gas reservation and adaptation of future technologies, which is what I brought up, need more technical and viability analysis, such as storage of hydrogen and other fuels, carbon capture and sequestration. Should we preemptively get ready for that? And can it be done on the locations that we're studying? Because there's some constraints, like how much land do you need to be able to do hydrogen storage, and all these things it has to be accounted for in this study. So the team is working on that piece. We're not issuing an RFP for a gas plant. That at such time that that's the time to share. We're not issuing RFP for for a gas plant. But instead, we're preparing also for the Florida Power Plant Siting Act process, which includes determination of need, which we will have to demonstrate the need of this is of the best interest of the customers. And we have to certify the site before we can build it. Building the site takes about, from the moment that you can start shovel ground and you have a selected, is 45 months. So the whole process is roughly around 5 years when you can actually accelerate it, right? From it's a 60 months kind of endeavor from the moment you start the power, a need for power process. The next piece, we have a solicitation process has concluded, and JEA has selected an engineering consultant that will perform a specific studies to inform the action plan that we're working between now and presenting in May and providing updates to the board and this committee. And we expect to see some results next month of some of those key tasks, and we'll continue sharing some of those activities and progress. I'll pause to see if any of these 4 activities that we have, there are any questions.
No questions, just it goes back to the timeline. I mean, you gave us the public forum is going to be late May. I'd love to see a real, when are we going to see it in this committee? When are we going to take it to the board? When are we going to, the dates?
Yeah, so we're gonna talk about goals today, and then we'll talk about them again at the board meeting this month.
Okay,
In April, we'll ask for you to approve them.
okay, that's
So-
helpful.
So March, we're gonna talk generally today, generally at the board meeting, and then the April board meeting, we will have a firm recommendation for you to approve to consider approval for those. So April is the target to get the goals approved, and the IRP will be presented at that point with all the background and information. We're not asking you to approve the IRP. We're asking you to approve the goals that we're shooting for going forward. And the IRP is the background that provides that information on what that is.
And this will be in April, right, Jay? For
April.
the April board meeting.
That's right.
But how can we approve the goals if we haven't seen the IRP?
You see the IRP before then.
Okay.
In March, or March, right?
I thought
We've
you
got
said
the copy.
today
You
you want us
you
to
said you
approve
got
the goals.
I do not want you to approve the goals today. I want you to
Okay.
talk about the goals,
Okay.
Have discussion.
It's just a discussion of potential goals, just having an open dialogue
Got it.
so we are receiving the 90% draft today. We need to make sure it's finalized before it actually comes to you in April. So we're gonna kind of help a little bit for that.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
No approvals today, just more sharing. Thank you for the feedback about the timelines. This has helped us to help you do your piece. So thank you.
Just, if I could, one comment on the, I'm getting back to Marty's thing, sort of on updating the IRP. And we said, 3 years or whatever, but what I sort of would hope is that, and there's a lot of information due out, so I know, so you probably had a group that had to make assumptions to continue with the analysis. But is there a way of tracking these assumptions so then once you know it's a fact, then you can incorporate that into the analysis? So what I'm sort of getting at is instead of a mindset of, okay, 3 years from now, we'll convene another IRP stakeholder meeting, Roger to that, but maybe doing more of a running estimate so that as you get facts at maybe 6 months from now, you can incorporate that into it instead of waiting till 2025 to do another IRP.
I'm gonna answer this question 2 pieces. The first
Okay.
one is we had a task to ensure we track all the assumptions
Good.
that we're working through. It came from this committee, and I'm ensuring that my team is doing so. So we have them all. They are going to be cross-verified.
Mhm.
That's what they have done so far.
Great.
And we are also adding additional capabilities in my organization to make sure that we can actually either run studies and validate some of the assumptions. And also, as things start changing, can we start tweaking? So we're not going to wait till the next RP to do a full blown, but definitely we're equipping ourselves to actually address what you just brought up. So it's a validation. I just want to know we're doing the right now, and then we're doing how we can get better going forward.
Great.
And we have always had a team that is doing short-term, long-term planning. They're doing day ahead,
Yeah.
moment ahead kind of planning and long-term planning on what our loads are. This is, the IRP itself is a little bit different in the the distinction that I draw in the IRP is that it is looking at lots and lots and lots of different scenarios that we're running the models on. And those are more, a moment in time that we're saying, this is what it looks like. We'll keep on evaluating that. But that's the reason we need to update this more frequently and think about it more frequently, is because there's some of the expectations or the plans that we put in there that if electrification goes faster or growth goes faster or slower, then it has a significant impact. And keep in mind, we're working towards a goal that we're going to try to recommend around clean energy. A piece of that is our plant, Vogel Energy, is non-carbon emitting. That took 15 years to build, and we are talking about targets of 2030, and it will end in 20 years, from not quite today, but close. We're getting close, when it will be up and running. So if we need to replace a non-carbon emitting 200 megawatt, which runs at a capacity factor of 90+%, which is a lot of energy, we need to have a plan. We need to start. We're looking so far out right now, and we have not historically. We've been comfortable for a long time. And there's a lot of changes that are coming. Aging infrastructure, a 20-year contract, the solar PPAs that we're entering into 20-year contracts. So that's the reason it has to be updated on a regular basis. We've set the goals, and we have to keep on. We're thinking that far out, so we've got to have a team that's looking at this. That's a long answer to circle back around to your question, which is absolutely, we've got to look at it. There's got to be a team of people that are spending all their time looking at planning, long-term planning.
Good. I want to clarify 2 points that I shared today in regards to when I talked about 2,475 is about 14,000 acres. First, I want to make sure I correct
we
that.
have 6,700.
And I would just thank you. So for the record, I want to clarify that number and statement. I read the wrong number on my notes. So it's 14,000 for about 2,400. And did you receive a text?
6,700.
That's
Thank you.
We all receive a chat. So thank you for the question.
That's a lifeline.
Yeah.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to provide you an update. I think we covered 2 topics today that I really want a closure of the analysis and then key activities that we're working on. Definitely, we need to provide more about timelines and decisions and all that. No decisions today, but I would like to pivot for a more open conversation. We touched on several things today in regards to goals, but how about we actually go to that potential goal slide and just go through that with the team. So I'll open the floor.
So this is the first goals and their potential goals.
Sure.
That we have brought forth, and we talked about this at the staff level, and Pedro has said, and I'm going to say, I believe that many of these are stretch goals, but to kind of put it into context. So on the previous slide with the IRP, that was with the 1275 of megawatts of solar, with the 200 megawatts of nuclear, and with all the other things that you saw that was coming out of the IRP. The CO2 reduction was 75%.
That's what that was going to be my first question.
This is 80%.
Okay.
And so we're challenging ourselves to make up that difference. We haven't talked about Jay talked about distributed energy resources, right? So that's solar in other places, renewable other places outside of what the IRP has shown us, like on a utility scale. So that's a stretch, even beyond what the IRP has said. The 35% clean energy, you saw that, which makes up basically nuclear as well as the solar. But again, there could be, as we look out through the system, DER can make a portion of that as well.
With solar today, with the 2% we had before and the latest PPA that we decided about paying out, what are we at today?
It's 39 plus 150.
4%.
Was
4%?
4%? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Just trying to understand.
4%.
so, yeah, so we
Got a long way to go.
we quadrupled the 1%.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're at 4%, and this, we'd be at 35%. So it's significant. We don't want to understate that. So as part of that, retire less efficient generation, and we've talked about that before, which is basically Northside 3. And Northside 3 is a gas unit. 100% clean energy for JEA facilities. And so we looked at those numbers. So basically
That's zero. Is that zero today? I don't know the contacts. What is it?
yeah,
today?
there's
2% because we're just a slice of the overall. We don't have it broken out like that. We have a handful of customers that have selected that they wanted to use solar under a program called Solar Max, and they had a agreement. What we're suggesting here is that we would serve all of our own facilities with 100% clean energy, and we could be a leader in as an organization. We can be a leader in moving towards clean energy. As a electric utility, we can move towards 35% clean energy as a
So zero carbon. When you're saying clean energy, so that's nuclear and
that's right.
solar and
We're so the slide with the donut chart showed that renewables moved in 2030 to 24%.
right.
Adding on the nuclear,
On
then the
top of
clean
that.
energy ends up at the 35% range. And so we feel like that's a significant increase from where we are today and where we've been. I think it helps directionally get us to the right spot.
and then finally offset the electrification demand with we'll call it energy efficiency programs. And so the model showed it had different models that showed different electrification rates, vehicles, or what have you. And so that would be offset that additional demand with enhanced customer programs. And that's a twofold thing when we start talking about affordability and weatherization and things such as that would marry up with that goal on the left side. And then if you look at the right side, and all of these are I'm not going to say like this just speaks to that, that just speaks to that, because I think they're all intertwined. CO2 reduction is intertwined with the solar, with the nuclear, even with the natural gas, the combined cycle. When we talk about the efficiency of that, even with the demand programs, but goals on the left side for discussion today, potential goals, and then the underlying plans to achieve those goals on the right.
The other thing when we talk, and we've had some stakeholder discussions, back to that same chart, the coal and petcoke is 3% of our load in the 2030 model. So it is therefore capacity. We'll use it whenever we need it at those times whenever it's called for, but it becomes a significantly less used resource. And so having it available helps save customers and keeps our cost affordable. Not using it helps support the environment and makes us sustainable. I think it's a reasonable balance. That's the way we kind of tackled this, is how do we balance that? And if we were to move more aggressively and take that offline, then the replacement of that would be very, very expensive. And so that's another least cost kind of alternative that we have.
If I may, I want to share a little bit more on the right side of that table. When you see 1275 solar and battery, right? We're seeing it that battery is also a resource that is a stretch. I want to kind of re-emphasize it. And just to help a little bit I'll use data a little bit to help you understand. So currently in the state of Florida is the third state with the most solar in the country, with about 10,000 megawatts of installed capacity. So when we're talking about 1275, it kind of gives you an idea that the entire state today is using that. It's the third state in the entire country. Texas and California are much farther along on this. But just to give you a little bit of perspective, 1275, still a stretch goal, and it has its own set of challenges from integration, from a building the grid that allows to support it, combination with all the other solutions. We believe it's achievable. We believe we should stretch ourselves to get there. But I wanted to put things in perspective so you see a little bit more context that allows you to
that's what I'm just missing. is the
understand you're missing that. I
context.
totally respect that because it's very technical, but I wanted to help you see kind of close the bridges. Is that reasonable? I think we could do more to help you understand how that compares or relates to some of the stretch goals that other entities either said or other validation. But at least for today, I wanted you to kind of you have some level of comfort that it's 10,000 megawatts today as a capacity, the third state in the country with that amount of solar specific. We are actually aiming for 1275 in a 7-year span. It's I'm glad to be here.
I think we've spoken on goals. I mean, set something that's a stretch, but I'm going to continue to challenge to even set another stretch on top of the stretch, which is let's not declare victory if we get to 1275. And again, I have no context, so I'm just trusting you guys. So I'd love to see the context to determine whether that's a stretch, but what would it look like if we went to 1400? I mean, what's the stretch beyond the stretch? Because this is important. I mean, this is really important to the community and to us as a utility.
As Jay just mentioned, I'm going to echo his words. We want to make him stretch, but we want to make sure we're transparent on what we can achieve because we want to succeed on this. And if we're able to do more, we are.
Well, so I think one of the things that we should talk about between now and then is how to accomplish what you just said. So, so what I'm hearing is that we shouldn't come back with 2030 goals and say that's it. That we may need to revisit either a range for a 2030 or a range in time. So either one of those. So what if we and we'll talk a little bit about this of what is a 2030 or a 2035, maybe as a stretch goal, or a range on this because we've gone back and forth internally with how to present what you're describing, and I think that that also would be consistent with what we've heard from stakeholders. So you hear from a stakeholder group, but there's other stakeholders that are looking at affordability only. There's other people that are looking at those. So we are trying to balance those. And so whether it's a stretch on time, size, scope, I think we can do that and have some really achievable goals. I believe that these are stretch and achievable. We've got the 4 sites that we're doing right now. I think we're doing. What size capacity do you expect to have on those 4 sites?
We believe the results in 3 weeks is going to tell us we could go somewhere between 450 or more.
So
from a size perspective and type of technology, I mean, yet to be proven. We consider battery again. It was not originally thought that way. We're considering battery to help us to have more.
So that helps us define clean. So clean isn't just solar. Clean is,
When it gives
all
me
those.
context on the 1275.
it does.
So I'm really missing.
The context is that you approved 150 with FPL. We've got discussions going on with another provider of another 150. And we've got 450 to 600 already in discussions right now. What we haven't talked about on this is the upgrades that will be required for our transmission system, both internally and offsite, to be able to get more energy and capacity, both energy and capacity into our system ongoing. So I think that having the combination of time and size goals that would provide ranges seems like I think we can bring that back.
I agree.
Okay. Anything else, Pedro?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting us catch up to you and the stakeholders.
John
I mean,
Baker, I think, is trying to
Oh,
talk to us,
yeah.
but he's,
John, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
you're muted though.
Unmute, she's good. Nope.
Nope, now you're muted.
Muted
Okay.
again.
Try one more time. John, I think you were unmuted and yep, there you go. Thank you.
Can we put a number, or have we put a number on these 2030 goals?
Cost wise,
Yes, including transmission.
yeah, we can,
We can do that.
I think that's pretty important.
yeah.
I agree. Like a draft. Okay.
So we've got,
We have the data.
one of the things that's in the report, and we talked about it, I think at the last meeting, but it's the total cost. It's a total cost of ownership over a 30-year kind of window is one of the ways that we've looked at this, but we should pull back out the capital impact for this versus the capital impact on the one of the models was just keep doing what we're doing, which isn't a feasible option, but we can talk about the cost in that.
Yeah.
Because we've got, we know the numbers for the Vogel impact that's already baked in. We now know some numbers on our solar because we've got two, one already under contract and one that's about to be, and we'll have the contract for whether we build or so I think we'll have pretty relatively firm numbers. It feels like that. Yes, sir. Yes.
And it's for
No, I've spent too much time talking. Yes, sir.
for the life, it's for the life of the cost for the life, accumulated cost.
And that was what was happening at the stakeholder meeting that I attended, as you were talking about the cost.
Yeah, we have the number, and I like to talk about it, kind of the entire resources, right? Because we're running a fleet,
Right.
right? It includes the existing one, and I think it's important that we talk about the context of what all is. And then the range, which is I just mentioned, the range is from the lowest all the way to the highest is $15 to $20 billion, right? Somewhere around that, right? Or much more than the cumulative cost being determined. But we will actually, to John's point, we will provide you the right. This is what it represents from a range and number.
We can also compare that to the capacity. What is the cost to operate where we are now on that, the donut, what we call the donut chart on that. We can overlay that with the cost of how that's going to work. That's an annual kind of cost, not just the capital cost. I mean, we can compare both of those and what the fuel might be. I did notice that the person that's going to do that, her name just popped up and she left the meeting as we started talking about it. So I assume that means she's already.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Pedro.
Thank you.
Excellent overview. Great. Okay, I think we'll go to Heather for the biannual review of procurement code.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Have you good, Heather?
Okay, great. Okay, good morning, Chair General DeSalvo and the rest of the board members. I'm Heather Beard, the Manager of Procurement Contract Administration. I've been at JEA for 24 years. I spent my first 8 years in environmental services as an environmental scientist, and then I transferred to the manager of procurement contracts after receiving my law degree. I'm happy to be with you all today, and I want to thank you for allowing me the time to present the proposed procurement code revisions. The purpose for the revisions of the procurement code is to streamline our processes for JEA to be easier to do business with. I would like to start with a summary of what the document is used for and a brief history for those of you not familiar with what it is and why we amend it from time to time. The procurement code is a policy document that governs all JEA purchases and related administrative activities and is supplemented by the operational procedures, which is more of a daily desk procedure for the procurement staff. The benefit to updating the procurement code is to maintain current and best practice procurement policies and processes for JEA, so we can achieve the maximum value from our procurement activities. The JEA charter requires a biannual review of the code, in which the last review was performed and approved by the JEA board in April 2021. Over the past 2 years, JEA procurement has implemented those changes, evaluated what has worked well, and continued to look at ways to improve our processes. With collaboration from all business units within JEA, we believe the proposed 2023 revisions streamline the procurement code and improve JEA's ability to make procurement decisions timely and in the best interest of our customers. The update to this code will replace all previous versions and will be used to make determinations on all current and future contracts. The significant changes are as follows. Article 2. In Article 2, we updated the awards committee language. We reduced the committee from 3 to 5 members to just the 3 members. We're stating that each awards committee member will have a 2-year term appointed by the CEO. Multiple terms are allowed. The threshold for taking awards to the committee will be adjusted to the following. For continuing services contracts, an excess of $300,000 spent annually would go to the committee versus $300,000 aggregate total contract spend, as we previously required. Contract assignments, when contracts are assigned from one vendor to another, this does not have to go to the awards committee anymore. This will rather be run through OGC. Contract terminations no longer have to go to the awards committee for approval. The terminations can be approved by the business unit chief and or CEO. Also, awards will be approved via consent agenda unless awards committee members require additional information or discussion on an item. Article 4, financial services and instruments. This section was deleted in its entirety and replaced by a procurement code exemption for financial instruments and services. Article 4 is previously written, deferred to finance to procure specific financial services and instruments due to limited market requirement of complex negotiations and limited time frames of services such as bond underwriting, fiduciary services, credit rating agency, dealer and remarketer, investment purchases and services, financial instruments, investor relations will fall under this new procurement exemption. Any financial services that fall outside of these categories will be bid out through procurement, such as audit services or banking services. Deleting section 4 and adding the finance directive to the procurement code as an exemption is just the first step in the process. The business will come back on April 14th to review the procedure and signatory authority with the Finance and Operations Committee. And the last changes were made to Article 5. Article 5 is going to be renamed as Article 4. As I mentioned, as Article 4 was being deleted. In Article 5, we're removing the right to appeal the Chief Procurement Officer determination of informal procurement protests. An informal procurement protest encompass thresholds for awards lower than $300,000 or less. So if you bring a protest for an award of $300,000 or less, the Chief Procurement Officer will make the decision, and that will be the final decision. If they don't agree with that, they can appeal, or they could possibly take us to court. We're also adding the requirement that a protest bond be submitted with all protests in the amount not to exceed 1% of the contract amount or $10,000, whichever is less. We also revised the timeframes and criteria for suspension and debarment of vendor bidding privileges to a tiered approach. First offense, up to 3 years suspension of bidding privileges. Second offense, up to 5 years suspension of bidding privileges. And third offense, bidding privileges suspended indefinitely or debarred. JEA may debar a vendor at any time depending on the seriousness or egregiousness of their actions. We don't necessarily have to go through that tiered approach. All other updates fall in line with best practices or reduces administrative efforts by simplifying the overall processes. We've included a clean and redline version of the updated procurement code for your review in the packet. If there are any additional questions about the updates, I'd be happy to take questions. Otherwise, we are asking the board for approval for the 2023 procurement code revision. And that is my presentation.
Thank you, Heather.
I did skim the document, another 200-something page document for us to review. There's a lot of language around protest. I just question functionally, how often nowadays do people protest your award decisions?
We don't see too many. They're few and far between. Jenny, you can speak more to it because you see them, but I would say a handful a year.
I think we had last year 4.
4, okay. There's just a lot of verbiage around that process, but we had 4 last year. Okay.
And we've had 2 in the last month. So
All right, good. So it's not, and I
It's
think
not
that
material.
bond thing is sort of a deterrent to make people think twice before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just tell me, well, there was, when you talked about Article 3, about approvals and removing dollar amounts or something, can you
Yes.
talk about that a little bit?
Yes, we're just changing one threshold. So for continuing services contracts, where it's like let's say a painting contract over a period of years, if the first year of the contract is $300,000 or less, that won't have to go to awards. Whereas now we look at the full amount for the term of the contract. So if it was $300,000 per year, $900,000, that would go now. But under the new revisions, if it's $300,000 or less per year, then it does not go to awards.
So an
Construction
example might
project-
be something that's $110,000. It's a 3-year contract, so it's $330,000. So now it does have to go to awards committee. We're saying that's really kind of below.
I understand. I
Yeah,
thought you were taking out dollar amounts, but now I understand.
No,
Okay.
we're just,
So trying to understand.
yeah.
Makes sense.
Any other questions? All right. Okay, I have a motion to recommend approval for the
Move to
procurement code.
approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Good. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Randy, how's it going today?
Fantastic. Good morning, Chair Salvo and members of the committee. Randall Barnes, good to see you again. I'm here to talk about the exciting topic of disclosure. So
Another 200-page document.
729 pages.
I know,
each year JEA is required to file annual disclosure reports, or we call them ADRs, with the Municipal Securities Rulemaking Board. And those are for our continuing disclosure requirements with regard to our bonds. The ADRs contain financial and operating information for each of our systems and are included by reference in our bond issuance documents. There are federal anti-fraud laws that apply to disclosures made by JEA in connection with these offerings. And so as board members, you are you should not authorize disclosure to be materially false or misleading, or disclosure that recklessly disregards facts or indicates that there is a risk the disclosure is misleading. And if you're aware of any kind of pressing financial or operating issues, or that then you're responsible for how those issues are disclosed to investors before authorizing the bond offering or the disclosure. So to ensure that you meet those standards, there's some things you can do. Obviously, you can review all 200 pages of the disclosure documents, as you should. And if you have any questions about those documents, you should definitely reach out to the leadership team or to me or my team, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Good news is that you're allowed to reasonably rely on staff to put together these documents, these disclosures. That's allowed in the whole process. And you may also recall that last May you guys approved disclosure policies and procedures that we're required to follow. So We do follow those. As you know, we provided you guys with draft versions of the ADRs at this point. They are draft versions, but they're mostly complete. We haven't added the appendices yet, and there may be a few items that need to be updated prior to the official disclosure. And so, prior to the April 14th meeting of the F&O committee, we will provide what I would call substantially final draft that would also have a red line compared to this one that we provided today that would show any changes. There shouldn't be many, but there will be a few items. And then my report to the committee on April 15th will basically certify that we have followed the disclosure policies and procedures, and ask for your approval of the ADRs at that point in time. And then finally, I just wanted to say that if you do have any questions or know of anything and want to disclose that, please feel free and do reach out to the leadership team or to me or my team. We're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, so, just so I'm straight, so the, for board approval for the, ADR, we're looking in April?
Yes, sir.
Okay, got it.
Because it's 200 pages, we thought we'd give you a month to read it.
And it's actually required by the disclosure policies and procedures this week. We give you guys a month to review.
Okay.
General, we have a June 1 deadline.
Okay.
Yeah, plenty of time.
So we're in good shape.
Good.
Unlike the audit.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's always fun until someone goes into the government.
Okay, good. Any comments or questions? Thanks, Randall, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I need to run. I think we've got all the stuff that we needed action
Yeah.
on.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks, Rick, I
All right.
appreciate it.
All right, I got
No problem.
Here's my mother. Excuse me.
Hey, Russell.
Good morning, everyone. Board, my name is Russell Caffey. I am the controller. I was informed I didn't need to give my bio like I did last time after I heard Heather's. I was excited that I didn't have to give mine. She sounds like a superhero origin story. Scientist turned attorney. So
We're all feeling sort of a little bit inferior.
yeah, so I'm glad I gave mine last time. I'm here to present the 2023 Q1 financial review. The first slide is our electric performance metrics. These are our 5 metrics. We have a couple changes to the presentation that weren't here last time. The format changes include these arrows that kind of show you the optimal glide path on our targets. We've also added colors to the arrows. Green is good, red has some opportunity for improvement. The top left is our days of liquidity. Our days of liquidity are strong as 254 to our 150 day target. And that's our daily run rate versus our readily available cash. As your eyes go to our second chart in the middle, the debt service coverage is also strong. This is our ability to repay 100% of our debts at our current operating levels. As you go to the final chart on the top right, our debt to asset ratio, this illustrates our proportion of the company's assets that are financed through debt. Lower is better. We're slightly above our target, but we're pretty much in range. As you go to the bottom row, our fixed charge coverage is positive. Fixed charge coverage illustrates how well we pay our fixed expenses, including mandatory debt and interest. Our last chart is our weighted average yield of investments. We're currently below our target. The fixed asset market's been volatile over the past 12 months. Currently, we're at 1.74 and our target is 2.94 for the quarter.
Okay.
Our fuel and purchase power. If you direct your eyes just to the middle, you'll see that our total fuel blended cost is $56.58 for the year as compared to $46.73 last year. But we all are familiar with the challenges in the fuel market right now. But for January, year to date, the number went down to $55.96. So there's potential for good news trending on this slide in the future. Our electric sales are up 1.2% and the customer base increased 2.2% compared to prior year. These results are projected to be in line with budget. Our electric O&M, our current year spend is up 27% over prior year. That's a $13.4 million increase. The main drivers are compensation and benefits at $9 million, and that's the result of a 3.5% to 4% increase in payroll. Additionally, overhead went up $3 million and professional services went up $2 million. Current projections have us spending $19 million less than budget. Capital forecast, our current year spending is in line with prior year. Capital projects usually get ramped up as the year goes along. As an example, at the end of January, we are already at $92 million, and most of our projects, our current projections are showing us at 95% of budget. For water, these are the same metrics as electric. Some of the targets are different for water as compared to electric. We have the same arrows. Liquidity is strong, 272 days to 100. Debt service coverage is strong. As you go to the far right, our debt to asset ratio is in the green for water at 37% to 50%. As you go to the bottom middle, fixed charge coverage is positive, and the bottom right, the weighted average yield of investments is the same as it was for electric. Our water system sales, sales are in line with our customer base increase with the exception of reclaimed. The little chart on the left, the bottom row, as your eyes go to the right, you'll see that there's a negative 4% change in prior year. That change is a result of several large retention ponds being filled in the Nocatee area. When there's capacity, our team will identify times of the year when they can fill things like a retention pond. So the new neighborhood kind of skewed those numbers. So that's the reason there's a negative 4%.
Okay.
Water for O&M, current year is up 27%. That's an increase of $11 million. Primary driver is compensation and benefits of $5 million, which is in line with the 4% increase. Additionally, there was professional services of $1 million and overhead and maintenance. Current projections have us spending 100% of the budget for O&M and water. And for capital for water, current year spending is $26 million higher than prior year. As I stated before, capital projects usually get ramped up as the year goes along. As you'll look at, like last year, we spent $37 million in the first quarter, and by the end of the year, we spent $301 million, and that's the corporate goal last year was $310. So we feel like we're in line.
Okay.
And I'll take any questions.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
We're doing okay.
Doing all right.
Good. That's good.
One
Thanks, Russell.
question.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
John's got a question.
Sorry, John, go ahead, please.
The investment yields obviously are way behind. What are we doing to try to get them up?
So
Is it
I'll
possible?
take a stab at that one, Mr. Baker. So we're going to be coming to you with some changes in the investment policy that we would like to incorporate. So there's always a lag because of the length of our portfolio is sometimes in that 1 to 3 years. And so as the rates have gone up, we have maintained those investments. So because we don't want to sell them for a loss. So as those things have become matured, we have been investing at a higher rate so that we will get closer to our target. But we also have some new ideas we would like to bring before this committee and the board on using some outside professionals to help us find that yield as well. But
Can I answer that first?
go ahead, Joe.
Former Chair Baker, we purposely stayed short in this rising interest rate environment. We're beginning to invest now longer term. So you'll see that yield number increase next quarter and continue to increase because we purposely stayed short.
We didn't want to jump in when it had gone up a little bit and get locked into those rates as we felt like everybody was telling us, hey, this is not a 3-month blip. This is a year, 2 years. So we were waiting to get back up towards the top of the curve on it, knowing that we can't time the market, and we don't try to do that either. But
that's the right answer. I appreciate it.
Thanks, sir.
Okay. Joe.
Good morning, General DeSalvo and committee member. Happy Players Championship Friday.
All right, I'm sorry.
ACC Championship Friday.
Rick already made that.
It's ACC Tournament Friday as well, and I'm sorry to hear that NC State
Keep on
lost last. Sorry, Jay. Notre Dame lost.
Do you have any questions?
I'm holding everyone from the Players Championship, so I will be brief. So we met with the rating agencies in February, all 3 of our rating agencies, and we were accompanied in the first 2 by Chair Stein, and former Chair Baker filled in admirably on the last presentation. So thank you, Chair Baker. We presented a financial condition for JEA, the electric system and water system, I should say, that is improved significantly over the last several years. The balance sheet in the electric system has debt at a 38-year low. In the water system, the debt to asset ratio is the lowest since fiscal year 2000 at 37%. System reliability in both the electric and water systems remains sound. The capital program is robust, $1.5 billion in electric over the next 5 years, $2.2 billion in water. Happy to report that we're going to start issuing some new money bonds. We have not issued new money debt since 2012. We expect to be in the market in 2024 for water and 2025 for electric. There is a placeholder for that new combined cycle generating facility that Pedro spoke about earlier. We continue to defease debt. We took proceeds from the sheer consummation payment from FPL, where we received $100 million at the beginning of last year. We paid down $48 million of bonds at Sheer, another $27 million at Power Park. We had intended to pay all of the outstanding debt at Sheer down, but there's a small portion of Build America bonds where the make-whole premium or redemption premium is frankly egregious. So we're just going to pay those bonds off. That make-whole created a call premium of about 26%. Just that we talked to Ted and we advised him that we could defease other bonds. And then we took $100 million of remaining cash on hand after the dismantlement and remediation of the Power Park property and reduced outstanding bonds at Power Park as well. So in a nutshell, a phenomenal year. And I'll get into specifics on the actuals and forecast in the next couple of slides. So these charts on top kind of covered up electric and water, but the dark blue is the electric system. These are actual numbers for debt service coverage. Water's in that teal color, I believe, for Go Jags. So the debt service coverage continues to increase in each system. That is temporary, though, because that reflects all the defeasances that we've done over the last several years. So our debt service requirements have dropped in the last few years. you'll see in the projections that those numbers come back in line with this historical norms. Debt to asset ratio, Russell talked about in each system continuing to drop. We were slightly above the target in electric at 50.9%. Happy to report at the end of February, we were at 45% in the electric system. I don't think we've been at that level, maybe ever. I'm just not aware of that. And in water, 37% compared to the industry is phenomenal. The industry median's 48%, and the February figure for water was 34%. So we are uniquely positioned to take on the capital that we're going to be spending in the next few years. And liquidity remains very strong in each system, both in terms of days of liquidity and days of cash. Debt management, we've talked about a $2.8 billion reduction since the peak, down to about $1.5 billion. Very comfortable with our fixed to floating mix. We're only at 6% in the electric system. It's been reduced since 2008, which was the peak, at about 20%. If you use the Moody's methodology of also deducting investments that mature within 1 year, we're actually negative. We have no exposure because our investment portfolio offsets the variable rate debt portfolio in each system, but by a larger margin in electric. This is our slide, what we committed to versus our outcomes for 2022. The area I'd like to talk about is liquidity. So it's a little bit misleading because while still strong, we didn't hit the 300 plus days of liquidity that we had projected. 254 is still above our policy upper limit of 250 days. We elected not to do any disconnects last summer for a 6-week period that ended toward the end of September. As a result, our customer receivables were up about $92 million relative to the prior year end. By December, we had collected $78 million of that $92 million. So you'll see a stronger liquidity number here going forward. But that was really the only outlier and does not give the rating agencies any cause for concern because the number is still superior.
Mm-hmm. It's just a timing.
Timing.
Yeah. If our year ended January 1st or December 31st, as opposed to September 30th, it wouldn't even show up. Right? So
correct. Weather normalized sales. Jay and Ted suggested we go to a weather normalized chart as opposed to just the straight unit sales figures per year. And this tells a story. And really beginning in fiscal year 2014, when we met with the rating agencies, I believe according to the agencies, we were the first Florida utility to show flat unit sales. And that's borne out. Now, thankfully, we've seen a slight increase. Prior forecasts had shown 12 million megawatt hours flat in the forecast period. We bumped it to 12.2. And we'll continue as electrification begins to take hold, growth in the system, customer growth, but we're hovering around 2% customer growth annually, and we're not seeing much of a unit sales increase. So we'll keep it at 12.2 for financial forecast purposes to be conservative. And we'll look to make adjustments as we see fit. Residential rates.
Other Florida utilities were showing.
Increasing
at what percent?
2 to 3%, including our friends to the south.
Well, there's a lot more growth down in that part of the state.
Correct.
There's a lot more reason to want to build capital. We want to be able to focus on our customers and balance that to be able to set our rates more equitably and fairly. So,
on the rate side, we see slightly increasing rates. Total bills really modestly increasing. Jay's talked about the base rate increasing over the next few years, largely because of the Vogtle PPA, but in line with historical inflation. So it's a story that is comforting to the rating agencies because they not only want to see the board's ability to raise rates, but also actually carrying through and raising rates. A lot of times utilities have needed to raise rates and they have not done that. So a favorable slide for the rating agency. We talked about the $1.5 billion of capital and the increases there in beginning in 26, 27. You could argue that we may see more increases in 25 as well if we were to proceed with that combined cycle facility. So new money, a great thing to be back in the market. I mentioned, I believe at the last meeting, that we have some investors, big name institutional investors that have stayed away from JEA because we've been doing refunding bonds where the maturities are relatively short. They want to put their money out for 20 to 30 years. We have not been able to accommodate that. And frankly, they're excited to see that we're going to be back in the market on some long-term debt.
The 10-year fixed rate was lower than the floating rate this week. It's crazy.
It's crazy. It is crazy. Correct. Financial metrics on the forecast side, debt service coverage remains strong. Debt to asset ratio, I mentioned, we're already at 45% as of February. It's staying in a mid-40s level based on the capital program. Again, that is in line with our pricing policy. It's also in line with our peer group. Days of liquidity projected to decline slightly as we begin to take on new debt, and that's expected. But again, the liquidity figures are strong and in line with the peer group medians. On the water side, while not as significant, still almost a $900 million reduction in debt. The debt composition in terms of variable rate debt is a little bit higher than the electric system. We did peak at 18% back in 2009. Again, this variable rate debt is offset by the investment portfolio. So there is very minimal true exposure on the water. There's a slight exposure, but it's in the $10 million range in terms of the net exposure. Just solid. I commented every meeting that we have a fortress of a balance sheet on the water side. These numbers are superior. They continue to improve. And frankly, they warrant an upgrade for all three rating agencies.
They love it when you tell them that.
Turns out they don't.
They don't really.
I know.
We're showing real 2% growth in the water.
But we're going to keep saying it.
I know. We're going to keep saying it.
They don't like it.
On the water side, we're seeing unit sales increases based on the growth in the really throughout our system, but particularly in Nocatee and in Nassau. So a great story. I believe 2% is conservative in terms of what the system can do. Capital program at $2.2 billion. Pedro's going to tell you it's more. We'll argue. Ted and I will argue with Pedro over that, but we have a $2.2 billion program over the next 5 years, and 60% of that's funded with internal cash generation. So we would continue to see that debt to asset ratio at or below 40%. And right now we're in a tremendous at 34%. We've got room to grow, and my treasury team's going to be busy. Financial metrics, all not only in line with AA, but AAA standards. Talked about the debt to asset ratio. Coverage remains solid at 3 times in the out years, and liquidity is as strong as it's ever been. So in a nutshell, we've begun doing this every year. We make the case why the electric system should be AA and why water merits a AAA rating. I've talked about at the beginning the superior financial performance of each system, and the governance matters. between the stability of this board, a leadership team that's been in place now. We made the point that we've addressed the governance and the social issues that the rating agencies have commented on and frankly held us back in ratings in the last couple of years. So we made a strong case on why these ratings need to improve. Can't guarantee anything. At least one of the three is contemplating a positive outlook in the water system that would entail the potential for an upgrade to AAA. So we're optimistic. And in closing, as it is past 11, I'd like to thank the Treasury team, Randall's team, specifically Shannon Tremaine, an analyst who spearheaded this project, but Ray, Ricky, Haivu, and Pedro and their teams assisted greatly. You'll see in the full presentation a pretty robust section on operations, and their teams were tremendous in turning around information and presenting JEA in the best light possible. So
Great.
with that, I'll take any questions.
And I'd like to make one other. So traditionally, these kinds of presentations, a group of folks from JEA would go to New York, and we would spend a day or two up in New York, meeting with the bond rating agencies, and having the capability to do these remotely. We invited more people from our staff to go. So some of our junior folks in the Treasury group were on these calls, so they could see what it's like. So when they have Randall, Joe, and my job later in their career, they'll already have a baseline to what these are like. So I was very excited about the fact that we were able to do the great work that we did putting this presentation together, but also use it as another opportunity to help grow our staff. Right.
Sure. Corporate strategy as well.
Yeah, corporate strategy.
Laura and her team participated.
So anyway, just wanted to note that I think that was a good byproduct of this whole
Are the
process.
rating agencies aware of that?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Yeah, that's great.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm always fascinated by the questions they ask, right? So was there a common theme? Was there something that stuck out that you were kind of surprised about? No.
So no, not really. So each one of them has their own corporate culture, and so one of them is more friendly. One of them is more gruff. But I think the types of questions that they ask are usually consistent from year to year. So I don't think they threw us any. There was no curveballs. I mean, there was we have that. We'll get you that tomorrow. Kind of answers to most of the questions. So
that's good. That's good. And we expect our upgrade when, Joe?
Can't make any predictions on that, and we don't expect to be in the market in the near term. With where rates are right now, our refunding opportunities have dried up.
Right.
So there's nothing imminent, but they tend to do mid-year credit report updates. So
right.
Depending on how busy they are.
So I'll say a couple of things about the credit ratings themselves. There was some common interest in the IRP, kind of where we are with the planning, and at least a couple of them were, I think, interested in the. This might be because we kind of focused on this because they've ahead of time said that they were concerned about governance historically, and so we talked about the stability of the board, stability of the leadership team and the organization, and made the point that they're looking forward really 3 years, and we're nearly 3 years from we're over 3 years from the concerns that they had about us. So I think we're headed in the right direction. But the rating agency numbers for me are similar to all the other measures. It is not, the goal is not, let's go get a AAA credit rating. The goal is make all the good decisions so that a AAA credit rating comes out of that. And the team is doing that. So Joe has made a point to us that whether the credit rating comes out at AA, AAA, the market sees us as AA, AAA, and so our cost for doing business will more than likely, when we needed to go out for borrowing, match up with the equivalent of a AAA, AA. And I think that's a testament not only to a narrow team that's doing the debt and the investment and borrowing side, but it takes everybody across the entire organization to be able to do that and make good decisions. And so I appreciate the input that everybody had to get us to this point and to have a positive story.
We watch these comparative spread levels between different utilities every week, and between Ted, Randall, and me, we've got a lot of experience, and our spreads tend to be very tight to somebody like an Orlando Utilities Commission, which is AA. Right now, only Fitch has the electric system at AA. The other two are high A, but we tend to trade pretty tight relative to some of these other AA utilities.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate
You
it.
bet.
Any old or new business on the table? Let me ask John, thanks for attending. John, anything on your end at all?
No, sir. Thank you for letting me join.
Sure. Our pleasure. Thanks, John. All right, our next meeting will be April 14th, and I'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you much.
Great meeting.
Yeah.
I think I hear Rick's cars. Fire screeching.
No, I think he's headed out. No.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Tom McDonald was listening on the call and, let's see. I think he said, oh, yeah.
The